If you're a beginning crocheter with a hungry hook, why not give these penny circle coasters a try? I will be going over absolutely everything you need to know to make two different versions, a plain version and a next level version that is decorated with an easy embroidery stitch. You only need a very small amount of yarn to make each coaster. I recommend using a 3-weight yarn, also known as 8-ply or DK weight, in 100% cotton, with a size G or 4mm hook. You will also need a stitch marker and a yarn needle for sewing in the yarn tails. If you would like to make the embroidered version, then you will also need some stranded cotton in at least 4 different colors. These are easily found in craft stores and come in a huge variety of colors. To sew with the stranded cotton, you will need a tapestry or cross-stitch needle. This kind of needle is smaller than your yarn needle, and it has a slightly blunt tip. A measuring tape will also be handy for measuring out the required length of stranded cotton you will need for each section. So let's have a closer look at how each coaster is made. Each one is worked in rounds, starting in the center with a very small circle of stitches. For this tutorial, I will be using US terminology when referring to the stitches, and in this case, these are double crochet stitches. These are also known as treble stitches if you are using UK terminology. Once the middle circle is made, you then jump up to the next round and work a slightly bigger circle around the first one, jump up to the next, and so on, until you have worked 4 rounds in double crochet. Finally, a very easy border is worked as the final round. So let's get going by attaching the yarn to the hook with a slip knot. And now we're ready to start round 1. Chain 3, which will count as the first double crochet of the round. And now trace back the chain stitches to find the slip knot, that very first V, and work a double crochet into the back loop of this slip knot. Next, place a stitch marker into this last stitch we made to mark the beginning of the round. Continue by making 10 more double crochets in the same place in that slip knot there as the previous double crochet. And if you made your slip knot the same way I just showed you, then it's possible that it might grow as you add stitches. don't worry about that. We can always tighten that up by pulling this short strand or yarn tail when we get to the end of the round. At the end of the round, you should have a total of 12 stitches. Just remember to count that beginning chain 3 as one of these stitches. And if your center or slip knot has stretched, like mine has here, now is the time to pull on the yarn tail to cinch that back up. Just tighten that up as much as you can. And finally, we work a slip stitch into the marked stitch. And remove the stitch marker. That's round 1 finished. Now, for the next and the following 2 rounds, we can break things down into 3 steps. The first step has to do with how we start each round. And each round always begins with chain 2 and then a double crochet worked into the same stitch as the last slip stitch. And then we place a marker to mark the first stitch of the round. And remember that the chain 2 and this double crochet, they count as the first 2 stitches of the round. Now, the next thing to do is to work a series of double crochets all the way around in a specific pattern. For this round, we are going to be working 2 double crochets in every stitch. So let's start that off. Find the next stitch of the round, work the first double crochet, and 1 more in that exact same space, or stitch I should say. When we work 2 stitches into the same stitch like this, it is called an increase. And we will be making an increase in every stitch. So in the next stitch, work 2 more double crochets. That's another increase done. And so on, until you get all the way to the end of the round. Now, I'm just coming up to the end of the round, and I'm pausing here because it helps to memorize what the very last stitch we will be going into looks like. So this will always be our last place to make a stitch in each round. Kind of looks like where that chain 2 is coming out of. So that's a good thing to remember in case you get a bit lost. So like I say, I've got 1 more increase to do in that last stitch. And that should give me 24 stitches in this round. Step 3 has to do with how we finish off a round. So for every round we do the same thing by making a slip stitch into the marked stitch and taking the stitch marker off. Here's our round 2 finished. So let's start round 3. It starts the same way with 2 chains, and a double crochet in the same stitch. And don't forget to put your stitch marker in to help us find the first stitch of the round. And for round 3, we've got a slightly different pattern. After we do what is in essence an increase, we do just a solitary double crochet in the next stitch. So there we have a kind of a 3-stitch pattern. The first 2 stitches are involved in an increase. The 3rd stitch goes into the next stitch. So to continue, that means work an increase in the next stitch, which eats up our first 2 stitches of the pattern, and then the 3rd goes in its own stitch. Another way of thinking about this is you will be making an increase in every other stitch. So here I'm starting the pattern again with an increase, a double crochet in the next stitch, increase in the next, and double crochet in the next. Alright, so just continue that sequence until you get to the end of the round. My last double crochet, and that's another key to check your work. The last double crochet goes in that last stitch that I showed you before. Alright, and as usual, end the round with a slip stitch in the mark stitch, and remove the stitch marker. And I should say at this point, you may notice that things are sort of cupping up like this, or not lying flat. Don't worry about that, we'll sort that out later, and it's perfectly normal for that to happen. Moving on to round 4, the chain 2, double crochet in the same stitch, and put in the stitch marker. And for this round, the pattern is different again. After we make an increase, we do a double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. So the pattern is increase, then double crochet, double crochet. So you can say that we've got an increase in every 3rd stitch. That makes sense to think of it that way. But really, if you memorize increase to start the pattern off, continue with double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the next stitch. So we're on the 4th round. Our repeat involves basically 4 stitches. The first 2 are involved in the increase, and the next 2 are just ordinary double crochets. I'll continue that for the rest of the round. There we go. There should be 48 stitches in this round. And as usual, slip stitch into the marked stitch and remove the marker. So for the border, we've got a new pattern to follow. and that is chain 2 and slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. So in this next stitch here, do a slip stitch and then do a slip stitch in the next stitch after that. And that's pretty much the pattern. Chain 2, slip stitch, slip stitch, chain 2, slip stitch, slip stitch. And that gives us a pretty little bump around the edge. Continue that pattern all the way around. And when you get near the end with chain 2, and you just need one more slip stitch because we made one in the beginning of the round when we closed off the row before, and fasten off the yarn. Next, weave in the yarn tails using your yarn needle. It's a good idea to do this now, even if you are going on to the embroidery version, because these yarn tails can get in the way of our new stitches. And for the yarn tail you will have for the center, if you want, you can go back through where you crocheted into that first slip knot. You can go all the way around again so that you can make that center ring extra tight if you want to by pulling on it. So if you are making the simple version, then you're finished. And again, if the piece is cupping a little, to give a light steam with a garment steamer or a quick press with an iron. And if you would like to do the embroidery, then stick around. Let's move on to that now. Now for the embroidery, we're going to kind of follow the same path, starting in the middle and working the first color and working our way outwards. So decide what color you want in the middle. In my case, it's going to be yellow, and cut a length of your stranded cotton to around 30 inches or 70 centimeters, which will be just enough to work this little middle section. Get your tapestry needle and thread the stranded cotton onto it. And I forgot to mention earlier that you can use one of these needle threaders to help you with that. These are easily available online. So if you're not quite used to working with some stranded cotton, that will make your life easier. Yeah, flip the coaster over, and you can see we've got our first round here, and what I'd like you to do is kind of pick a spot that would be on the edge or the outer edge of round 1 and secure the thread. So just go in anywhere kind of and just make a couple of quick stitches to anchor that thread in. Okay. Now, kind of remember where you are. Just poke the needle out to show you kind of where you were on the back. And what I'd like you to do is, instead of going out there, I'd like you to aim for right in the, I don't know, I'm going to call it the guts of the stitch. So right there, that is where we poke our needle through. Now we're going to be working in a buttonhole stitch, which means that we're going to then go in, and in this case we're going to go right in the middle of our center circle and come back out through the guts of the next stitch. Right there. And as we pull the yarn or the cotton through, we want to catch this in kind of a loop. So it ends up looking kind of like an upside down letter L. So that's our first buttonhole stitch made. Continue by going in the middle and out through the guts of the next stitch. And again, if we keep the main length of the yarn under the needle like this, as we pull through, it kind of catches in like that. There we go. And we're not pulling too tight or too loose, just kind of get it just right so that these sort of horizontal strands follow the edge of the circle. Let's do one more. If I start each stitch by laying the yarn over like this, going in, out through the next stitch, pull it through, and that's how we finish all these stitches in the very middle of the coaster. Now I'm almost at the end, and to help things look like you're making a kind of a seamless join, so to speak, you need to do something slightly different for the very last stitch. So I've just come out of this stitch here, and I see the next stitch already has some of the thread coming out, so I know I'm at the end. So what I do here, instead of going back in the middle, I'm going to just catch underneath that horizontal strand. Go ahead and pull that through, and then go through the middle. And you can see how that keeps the continuity of our pattern going. Yeah, that's finished. And of course, secure it with a few quick stitches on the back. And there we have our round one done. Moving on to the next round, it is slightly different because we're not going into the same place each time. So I'll just go through how that is done. I'm using green for this round. If you cut that to about 40 centimeters, or 40 inches, or about 100 centimeters, you should have enough to get around without having to rejoin another length. Okay, so turn it over, and we can see round 2, the edge of it, going around here. So just pick a spot, secure the thread, and again just poke your needle through just to see where you are. And now let's fine tune it by going through the nearest stitch, or the guts of the stitch. So come out through there. Just lay that to the left. And this time we've got this stitch we're coming out of, but we want to go back in to the bottom of the next stitch. So we've come out of this stitch, come to the next, find the bottom, go in there, and come out through the top of that next stitch, and finish off the buttonhole stitch. Again, this was actually, remember, an increase. So we kind of pretty much go into the same place again. But as a general rule, we've come out of this stitch, come to the top of the next stitch, go down to the bottom, and that's where you go in. You go in there, out of the top of the stitch. So basically you're just sewing over the top of every stitch. And I'm being a little bit picky. You don't really have to be quite so picky if you want things, you know, to look a little bit more rustic. That's okay. I just think I like the look of how I'm doing it here. Okay, let's repeat that. I've come out of this stitch, come to the top of the next stitch, go down to the bottom, and that's where you go in. Come out of the top of the same stitch and pull through. There's the top of the next stitch, but I want to go into the bottom, out through the top, underneath the thread there, pull through, and that is your sequence. You go all the way around, and you end it the same way we did on this round 1. Again, you remember how we went through that stitch and then down. So just wind back if you need to review how to end a round. It's the very same thing. So I'll leave you to it. You've got 2 more rounds to do in whatever colors you like. And if you want to skip around and not have any embroidery at all, for example, I didn't put any in the center of this one, so you can skip around as you like as well. So I hope this project has fed your hook well. Thank you for subscribing, and I hope to have some more projects for you soon.